Martin Hayes drove down Maple Street in his old sedan, the engine humming softly beneath his hands. It was a crisp morning, sunlight spilling through the windshield and warming his face. He thought of his daughter Sophia, waiting at home. Her smile had returned after weeks of illness, but only because he had managed to save enough money for her new medicine. Today's visit to the bank would cover her next round of treatment. He parked in the empty lot and took a deep breath. The bank stood tall and gray, its front doors gleaming under the morning sun. Martin smoothed his shirt, straightened his tie, and stepped out. His heart felt light with hope. He pushed open the glass door and walked inside. The lobby was quiet, save for the soft murmur of a teller's voice and the gentle whoosh of air conditioning. Martin approached the counter with his deposit slip and check in hand. He offered a polite nod to the teller, a young woman with dark hair and kind eyes. "Good morning," he said. "I'd like to deposit this." She smiled and took his slip. "Of course, Mr. Hayes. Please have a seat, and I'll take care of it." Martin thanked her and turned toward the row of chairs. As he walked, he noticed the branch manager, Ms. Caldwell, standing behind her desk. Her arms were crossed, and her gaze followed him. He paused in front of a chair and sat, trying to calm the flutter in his chest. Moments later, the teller returned his receipt and handed back his ID. She whispered, "I'm sorry, sir. You'll have to wait here for a moment." She pressed a discreet button beneath the counter. Martin frowned, confusion and concern mixing in his mind. "Is there a problem?" he asked softly. She shook her head. "I don't know. Please wait." Her voice trembled. Martin's stomach twisted. He glanced around the lobby. A few other customers looked up from their phones, curiosity lighting their faces. No one spoke. The soft hum of the bank suddenly seemed loud. Seconds later, two men in dark suits stepped through the doors. Their badges shone as they approached. Martin's heart pounded. He rose slowly, hands lifting slightly in confusion. "Mr. Hayes," one agent asked, his voice firm. "You need to come with us." Martin's mouth went dry. I don't understand," he stammered. "What is this about?" The suit did not answer. Instead, the other agent clicked a pair of handcuffs. Martin felt a cold wave of panic wash over him. He opened his mouth to protest, but the words stuck. The agents guided him toward a chair in the middle of the lobby. Customers stood, phones, Ray's filming. Martin's face grew hot with shame. He thought of Sophia's face, innocent and trusting, and felt a fierce anger and fear. This was wrong. He had done nothing wrong. A hush fell over the room as Ms. Caldwell watched from behind her desk. Her eyes held regret, or maybe doubt. Martin locked eyes with her for a brief moment. He tried to speak, voice low but steady. "Please," he said, "there must be a mistake." The taller agent glanced at his clipboard. "We received a call saying you didn't belong here," he said. "We need to verify some information." Martin's chest tightened. "I served in the army," he managed. "I'm a veteran. I risked my life for this country." He glanced at the agent's badge, then bowed his head. "I'm not a criminal." Behind him, whispers began. One customer murmured, "I can't believe it." Another said, "Poor guy." But no one moved to help. The weight of their silence pressed on him like a heavy stone. Martin closed his eyes for a moment and took a slow breath. He pictured Sophia's smile, her small hand slipping into his. His heart steadied. He would stay calm. He would fight this with truth. He opened his eyes, lifted his chin, and faced the agents. Though his hands were cuffed, his spirit refused to break. He would prove who he was, and he would keep his promise to his daughter. The lobby felt colder now, shadows gathering at the edges, but in Martin's mind, a small spark of courage burned bright, refusing to be extinguished by fear or prejudice. And in that moment, as the agents prepared to question him, Martin Hayes stood tall in his own quiet way, ready to show them the man they had misjudged. Martin sat on the hard plastic chair, his hands still cuffed at the wrists. His chest felt tight as if the air itself weighed too much. Around him, customers watched in silence, their eyes full of questions that Martin could not answer. He took a slow breath, trying to calm the storm inside him. He reminded himself that fear was natural, but truth was stronger. As he waited, Martin's mind drifted back to the desert heat of his deployment. He saw bright sunlight sizzling off the sand, heard sandstorms whip against his helmet, and felt the heavy weight of his rifle. He remembered guiding a convoy of supplies across a stretch of broken road, keeping watch for hidden dangers. He thought of the soldiers he led, their faces lined with fatigue and hope. He remembered giving his last bottle of water to a wounded comrade. He remembered standing beneath a ruined mosque, comforting a grieving family. In each memory, he had acted with honor. He had risked his life to protect strangers and friends alike. He had returned home proud, but also changed. The army had taught him to face fear with steady resolve. Now, sitting in the bank lobby with cold metal at his wrists, he felt a fierce irony twist in his gut. He had worn his uniform to show respect. Yet here, his service meant nothing. Martin glanced at his crumpled army jacket draped over the seat next to him. He thought of the day he was discharged, the ceremony under a bright sky, friends cheering, family clapping. He had dreamed of peace, of quiet days with Sophia in the park, of helping his neighbors, of earning honest money. But peace could be fragile. One false call, one wrong assumption, and all those dreams were crushed under doubt. An agent approached, clipboard in hand. "Sir," the agent said softly, "we need to verify a few things." Martin nodded. He fought the urge to flinch. "I understand," he said. His voice was calm, steady. "Ask me anything." The agent's eyes softened for a moment, as if he recognized the weight Martin carried. But duty held him. He read off questions about birth dates, address history, bank records. Martin answered each one clearly, watching the agent mark boxes on the paper. While the agent worked, Martin took in the faces around him. A mother held her child close, peeking from behind her newspaper. An older man tapped his cane impatiently. A young woman in a business suit stared at her phone, her lips pressed tight. None offered help, but a few held back sympathy in their eyes. Martin felt both shame and anger. He tried to remember that most people meant well, but feared what they did not know. He pictured Sophia's small bedroom, painted sky blue. He saw her favorite teddy bear waiting on the shelf. His heart ached. He thought of her sick smile last night, of her tiny voice saying, "Daddy, thank you for making me better." He closed his eyes, breathing in and out, using every ounce of will to hold back tears. He would not break here. Minutes later, the agent checked his paperwork one last time. "Everything seems in order," he said, returning the clipboard. He tapped the cuffs. "You're free to go." Martin's shoulders slackened as the metal fell away. He rubbed his wrists. The agent offered a thin, apologetic nod. Martin stood, glancing at Ms. Caldwell behind the desk. Her face held regret, her eyes downcast. Martin walked toward the teller window again. Each step felt heavy, as though he carried the weight of the misunderstanding on his back. Yet beneath that weight, a small spark of hope stirred. He would tell his story, and he would find a way to make things right for himself, for Sophia, and for every person who might one day be judged too quickly. In that quiet moment, Martin Hayes realized that truth and honor could shine through the darkest mistakes, and that he would never let fear or doubt steal his dignity again. Martin approached the teller's window again, heart pounding but steady. The young woman looked up, relief washing across her face. "Mr. Hayes," she said softly, "I'm so sorry for what happened." Her voice trembled with genuine regret. Martin nodded, offering a small, understanding smile. He recalled how frightened she must have been when the false tip came in. In that moment, he saw her fear, and he forgave her. He slid his deposit slip and check across the counter. "Thank you for your help," he said. She processed his transaction with extra care, her hands gentle as she counted the money. Martin watched the numbers rise on the screen, each dollar a promise for Sophia's medicine. He felt a surge of relief and gratitude, even after the terrible mistake. Kindness remained in the world. Once the teller handed him the receipt, Martin turned toward Ms. Caldwell. She stood near her desk, shoulders hunched, looking smaller than before. He squared his shoulders and walked to her. Other customers paused their conversations, watching the moment unfold. Martin felt their attention, but he focused on the manager alone, Ms. Caldwell. He began, voice calm but firm. "I know you acted out of fear. I know you believed you were doing your job." He paused, letting his words settle between them. "But your fear almost ruined everything I've worked for. It almost broke my daughter's hope." His voice cracked at the last word, and he looked away for a moment. Ms. Caldwell's eyes filled with tears. She stepped forward, trembling. "Martin, I owe you more than an apology. I was wrong to call them. I let my bias win over my judgment." She reached out, but stopped herself, unsure if he would accept her touch. Martin met her gaze. He saw genuine sorrow there. He inhaled slowly. "We all make mistakes," he said, quietly. "But it's what we do after that counts. You can choose to learn from this." The bank manager nodded, tears rolling down her cheeks. She offered her hand. Martin hesitated, then took it. Their handshake was simple, but it carried healing. A murmur of approval rippled through the lobby. The customers shifted, some clapping, softly, others smiling. A sense of unity spread like a gentle wave. Martin straightened his tie and turned back to the teller. He gathered his jacket and his deposit slip, tucking both safely under his arm, as he walked toward the exit. Martin felt the eyes of strangers on him, but this time their looks were not of judgment, they were of respect and empathy. A few nodded, in recognition of his service. One man whispered, "Thank you for your sacrifice." Martin nodded back, touched by the spontaneous gratitude. Outside, the morning sun felt warmer than before. The world seemed brighter, as though the bank's walls had held both darkness and light, and now the light had won. Martin breathed in the fresh air, savoring the moment. He recalled Sophia's laughter at breakfast, her excitement for the day ahead. A smile lifted his lips. Before stepping into his car, Martin paused by the entrance. He pulled out his phone and opened the camera app. With a steady hand, he captured the bank's sturdy pillars and wide doors, the place that had nearly become a place of shame but had transformed into a symbol of understanding. He would send this photo to Sophia, telling her that even in hard times, people could change and grow. As he drove away, Martin felt a gentle strength settle into his bones. He had faced false accusation, pain, and doubt, yet he had emerged with dignity intact. He had shown the world the power of forgiveness and the courage of compassion, and in his heart, he carried a simple truth. Even the deepest wounds could heal when people chose empathy over fear. Word of Martin Hayes' ordeal spread quickly through the small town. By midday, local news vans lined the curb outside the bank. Reporters gathered with cameras and microphones, eager to hear his side. Inside, Ms. Caldwell and her staff watched from behind the teller windows, anxious and ashamed. They whispered among themselves, worried they had harmed an honest man. Martin stood before the reporters, his uniform jacket draped neatly over his arm. He cleared his throat and spoke in a calm, steady voice. "I came here for my daughter's medicine," he began. "I did nothing wrong, but I forgive those who made mistakes." His words carried both pain and grace. Cameras clicked as the crowd listened, moved by his strength. Outside, neighbors clustered on the sidewalk. Some held handmade signs that read, "Thank you, veteran," and "Justice for Martin Hayes." A local teacher, Mrs. Ortiz, knelt to tie her son's shoelace and said softly, "See, Miguel, always stand by the truth." The boy looked up, eyes wide, then waved at Martin through the glass doors. Martin smiled and waved back. Back inside, the bank manager stepped forward, heart pounding. She adjusted her glasses and lifted a prepared statement. "On behalf of this bank," she said, voice trembling, "we apologize to Mr. Hayes and his family. We will review our policies and provide anti-bias training for every staff member." Her words were simple, but the promise felt weighty. Martin nodded in acceptance. The branch's customers, once silent observers, began to speak up. The elderly man with the cane cleared his throat. "Sir," he said, voice weak but firm, "we are sorry this happened. Thank you for your service." One by one, others echoed his sentiment. The teller who had pressed the alarm covered her face, tears shining. Martin offered her a gentle nod. In the parking lot, Agent Ramirez and his partner stood beside their car, uniforms crisp under the sun. Passersby thanked them for handling the situation with care. Ramirez caught Martin's eye and raised his hand to salute. The agent's partner joined in. For a long moment, Martin held their salute, his back straight and proud. The onlookers fell silent in respect. Later that afternoon, the mayor stopped by. She shook Martin's hand and presented him with a town resolution honoring his service and courage. Sophia watched from Martin's side, hugging a new teddy bear embroidered with a small American flag. Her eyes shone with pride. "Daddy," she whispered, "you're a hero." Martin hugged her close, feeling a warmth that no injustice could touch. In the days following, the bank staff attended workshops on implicit bias. They learned to question assumptions and to treat every customer with dignity. Ms. Caldwell wrote Martin a personal letter expressing her regret and gratitude for his forgiveness. He kept the letter in his jacket pocket, close to his heart. The local paper ran a full-page story, headlined, "Veteran Wronged, Veteran Forgives." It told of a community coming together to right a wrong. Martin read it at home, Sophia curled up beside him. They smiled at the pictures. Martin's calm face, the smiling teller, the saluting agents. He closed the paper and kissed Sophia's forehead. That night, Martin sat on his porch, looking out at the quiet street. Fireflies blinked in the lawn, and crickets sang in the trees. He remembered the fear he felt that morning, how close he came to losing more than money or time, but his sense of safety and respect. Yet here he was, surrounded by a community that chose understanding over fear. He reached for his phone and typed a message to Ms. Caldwell. "Thank you for taking steps to learn and grow. Your promise gives me hope." He pressed send. As he watched the blinking sent icon, Martin felt a deep peace settle in his chest. Even after the darkest moments, kindness and courage could light the way forward. Martin awakened early the next morning, sunlight spilling through Sophia's bedroom window. He watched her sleep, peaceful at last, her breaths steady and calm. The events of the past days had left him both exhausted and determined. He dressed quietly and stepped outside, the cool air filling his lungs as he stood on the porch. In the soft light, he saw the small American flag he had bought for Sophia's teddy bear waving gently. He placed a hand over his heart. Remembering the salute he had received, he drove to the community center, where a meeting was scheduled for local veterans and community leaders. Flyers had gone up inviting everyone to discuss ways to prevent bias and support returning service members. Inside, a dozen people gathered around a long table: teachers, police officers, bank employees, and fellow veterans. Ms. Caldwell sat at one end, looking nervous, her eyes hopeful. When Martin entered, the room quieted. Sophia, dressed in her school uniform, stood at his side, clutching her teddy bear. "Thank you for coming," Martin began, his voice steady but warm. "We are here not to assign blame, but to build understanding." He told his story again briefly. This time Anne paused to let the weight of his words settle. Faces in the room reflected sorrow and shame, but also a spark of commitment. Martin looked at Ms. Caldwell. Fear can make us react wrongly, but knowledge and kindness help us act rightly. She nodded, tears brimming. As the meeting continued, participants shared ideas. A retired teacher suggested implicit bias workshops for local schools. A police sergeant offered to help officers learn de-escalation and community engagement. The bank manager proposed a monthly veterans breakfast at the branch, where servicemen and women could connect with staff. Martin listened, proud of how the community had rallied. He realized that change began when people chose to listen instead of judge. After the meeting, Martin and Sophia walked to the playground next door. She ran ahead, laughter bright like bells. Martin sat on a bench and watched her swing, remembering how sick she had been. Now, with medicine in hand and a community behind them, he felt a swell of hope. A neighbor, Mrs. Ortiz, joined him on the bench. She handed him 2 cups of coffee and smiled. "Your courage has touched us all," she said softly. Martin thanked her, raising his cup in salute. That afternoon, Martin visited the bank again, this time for a different reason. He brought a stack of thank you cards he had made with Sophia's help. Inside each card, they had written personal notes of gratitude to the teller, security staff, and manager. He handed them out one by one, watching faces light up with surprise and joy. The teller who had pressed the alarm embraced him, tears in her eyes. She said, "You turned my fear into learning." Martin smiled and patted her shoulder. Driving home, Martin thought about the journey from suspicion to respect. He felt the weight of his uniform on the back seat, a reminder of his past service and his present role as a bridge between worlds. He glanced at Sophia, sleeping in her car seat, and whispered, "We did good today, kiddo." He knew their story would not end. Here it would grow, touching more lives and teaching more hearts. That night, Martin sat at the kitchen table, pen in hand. He began drafting a letter to the local newspaper, proposing a permanent veterans advisory council. He wrote of healing wounds, building trust, and preventing fear from turning into injustice. As he wrote, the words flowed easily, fueled by the kindness he had witnessed and the love he held for his daughter. In the glow of the lamp, Martin Hayes found not only redemption for himself, but a purpose that would guide him and his town award a better tomorrow. Weeks passed, and the town prepared for the big event, a ceremony of honor for veterans and community allies. Martin arrived early at the town hall, his uniform jacket pressed and his boots polished. Sophia tugged at his hand, her smile bright, as she carried a small bouquet of wildflowers. The hall filled with tables draped in red, white, and blue, and walls lined with photographs of local heroes. As the mayor took the stage, Martin's heart swelled. He remembered the day he was wronged. How quickly fear had turned him into a suspect. Now he stood among friends and neighbors who had learned alongside him. He spotted Ms. Caldwell in the front row, her eyes shining with pride rather than doubt. She offered him a warm nod. The mayor spoke first, praising the spirit of unity. "Today," she said, "we recognize not only our veterans, but the power of forgiveness and the strength of community." Applause rolled through the room like gentle thunder. Martin looked to Sophia, who clapped enthusiastically. He felt a warm glow in his chest. Next came the bank manager's speech. Ms. Caldwell stepped up, voice steady. She shared how her mistake had led to real change. Staff training sessions, veterans breakfasts, and stronger bonds across the town. She paused, looking at Martin. "Thank you for showing me the path from fear to understanding," she said. Tears glistened in her eyes. Martin joined her on stage. He held Sophia in one arm and accepted a framed certificate of appreciation. The plaque read, "To Martin Hayes, for courage, forgiveness, and leadership." His throat tightened as he looked out at the crowd. Teachers, officers, reporters, and townspeople, all gathered in respect. He cleared his throat. "I never imagined I'd be honored for surviving a mistake," he began with a small laugh. "But life taught me that mistakes can become lessons. I thank you all for learning with me. His voice grew strong. My daughter and I feel safer and more loved because of your kindness. Sophia climbed down and stood beside her father. She raised her hand and saluted him, her tiny fingers straight and proud. The audience gasped in delight, then burst into applause. Martin knelt to hug her. Thank you, soldier, he teased, kissing her forehead. She giggled. After the ceremony, people lined up to shake Martin's hand and share their stories of bias turned to respect. A young officer described how he now paused before making judgments. A high school student spoke of starting a club to promote awareness. Martin listened, grateful that his ordeal had sparked real action. That evening, as the sun dipped low, Martin and Sophia walked home under a sky painted with warm hues. He carried her on his shoulders. She pointed to the horizon. Look, Daddy. They stopped in the yard to catch them, their laughter mingling in the air. At bedtime, Sophia hugged her teddy bear and whispered, Daddy, you're my hero. Martin kissed her cheek and tucked her in. As he turned off the light, he thought of the morning when his world had shattered for an instant. Now, it was whole again, built, stronger by understanding and respect. He stepped into the hall and paused. By a photo on the wall, Martin in uniform, saluting FBI agents. Beneath it, a caption read, Salute in the face of fear. Martin smiled. He realized that true honor did not lie in medals or certificates, but in the courage to forgive, the resolve to teach, and the grace to lead others into the light. The morning sun rose over the quiet neighborhood, casting a golden glow on Martin Hayes's front yard. He stood at the edge of the driveway, hands in his pockets, drinking in the gentle warmth. Next to him, Sophia hopped on one foot, her backpack hugged tight as she waited for the school bus. Today felt different, full of promise and fresh starts. As the bus rumbled to a stop, Sophia waved vigorously at Martin. Her face shone with excitement. He knelt and adjusted her straps, then ruffled her hair. Have a great day, soldier, he said softly. She saluted, grinned, and climbed aboard. Martin watched as the bus drove away. Thinking of how far they'd come from that tense morning in the bank lobby, he closed his eyes, remembering the weight of handcuffs and suspicion, the sting of fear in strangers' eyes. Now, he felt light, filled with hope and purpose. He turned to the front door, where his uniform jacket hung on a hook beside a new sign that read, Heroes Welcome Here. He smiled, touching the embroidered letters. Stepping inside, Martin found Ms. Caldwell waiting at his kitchen table. She held 2 mugs of coffee and offered one to him. Thank you for letting me visit, she said quietly. Martin accepted her gift and gestured for her to sit. He remembered the first time they met, tense and full of doubt. Now their friendship felt genuine and warm. She took a grateful sip. I've been thinking, she began, voice steady. Our bank isn't the only place that needs change. I want to work with you to start a town-wide program, understanding. First, her eyes shone with determination. We'll partner with schools, businesses, and the police to teach empathy and respect. Martin's heart swelled. He reached across the table and shook her hand. Let's do it, he replied. Their plan took shape in that humble kitchen, workshops and classrooms, community events at the park, a traveling exhibit where veterans could share their stories. By the time they finished, the morning light had warmed the room, and their shared vision felt real, urgent, alive. Later, Martin walked to the community center, carrying a stack of flyers. He passed houses where neighbors waved hello, their smiles genuine. At each step, he felt the town's support echo in his heart. He posted signs on bulletin boards, pinned flyers to lampposts, and handed them out to anyone who paused. People stopped to shake his hand, thank him for his service, and ask how they could help. That evening, he returned home to find Sophia drawing at the kitchen table. Beside her lay a colorful poster that read, Big Event, Understanding First. All are welcome. She looked up and beamed. I want to help, Daddy, she said. Martin hugged her tight. You already help me every day, he told her, voice thick with pride. After dinner, father and daughter set out more flyers together. Sophia pinned them at the corner store, the library, and the park entrance. Passers-by smiled at her determination. Martin realized that her small hands carried more weight than any official document. They carried the promise of a kinder future. As night fell, Martin tucked Sophia into bed. She yawned, eyes heavy, but her smile remained. Tomorrow, I'll tell my class about the program, she murmured. Martin kissed her forehead. You're changing the world, one story at a time, he whispered. She closed her eyes, drifting into sleep. Martin sat alone in the living room, lamp casting a warm glow over his hero's welcome here sign. He thought of the journey that had walked from fear and injustice to forgiveness and action. He felt no anger left, only a quiet resolve to build something stronger than the mistakes of the past. In the days that followed, Understanding first launched with a community picnic. Veterans shared their experiences, children painted banners, and neighbors pledged to pause before judging. The event felt like a turning point, as if the entire town had breathed out together, letting go of old fears and breathing in hope. Martin stood beneath the banner, holding Sophia's hand. They watched families laugh, friends embrace, and strangers become allies. In his heart, Martin knew that this was the true victory, not a salute from agents or a plaque on the wall, but a community choosing empathy over fear, respect over suspicion. As the sun set on the picnic, Martin and Sophia walked home, side by side. He looked down at her, her eyes reflecting the pink sky. "We did good," he said quietly. She nodded, sleepy but content. Martin smiled, thinking of the future. They would build one story, one conversation, one small act of understanding at a time. And in that promise, he found the powerful ending he had longed for, not just for himself, but for everyone who would follow their path from doubt to hope.